All right, I think I got everything set up. There's been some technical difficulties. I was on the wrong account because I have 3 different YouTube accounts. And then OBS died for some reason as soon as I launched it. Like, as soon as I launched the live thing, all of a sudden OBS was like, oh yeah, by the way, close. So that's fun. I hope you guys can hear me. Otherwise, I'm just talking to myself. And now someone's decided to start up their motorcycle and just idle it for, ever. Emptied a rattlecan yesterday up here in BC. Have a good one. Nice. Good to hear, David. Learned that cheap perfume bottles make great application of shades better than just using an airbrush. Afternoon, Uncle Adam working on Forces of the Abyss ambush set for Kings of War. Nice. Good morning. On the road traveling in Glen Falls, New York. Well, have a good trip, Frank. It's already hot and muggy down in DC. Priming season came and went fast. Well, that's a bummer to hear there, Fungazi. Let's see here. Sunny Glasgow, Scotland. Temple Patrick, Northern Ireland. Hello, and may the 4th be with you. From Jonesboro, Illinois. May the 4th be with you. I don't get it. Good morning from Pleasant Corpus Christi, where I'm printing hordes of teams for OPR's Grimdark Future Firefight and terrain for an end-of-school year board game room event. Well, that sounds fun. Good morning from Southern California, drinking coffee and putting the finishing touches on my Mordheim Warband for Nemo mid-May. Nice. I wish I could go to that. I would really love to, but it is like just before our game launches, kind of. So it's not, I've got a lot of stuff I've got to get done, videos and things like that. So that is kind of a bummer. VJ Morph, how you doing? Rod Demore, good morning. Checking in from gloomy, damp South Ontario, getting some stuff done up here. Well, it's good to hear, John. Morning from Quebec. Morning from raining and overcast Newark, Delaware, where I'm considering what solo-friendly rules I want to use for some 18th century imaginations gaming. I got exactly 0 hobby done this weekend, but I did make it to see Thunderbolts. It was pretty good, I thought. Florence Pugh and Dave Harbour were pretty good. I mean, yeah, they're both great. No spray priming outdoors this morning. It's lovely and sunny here, and it's like currently 51 degrees Fahrenheit. It's supposed to be a high 62. This entire week is going to be good priming weather, so that'll be nice. Switching into live chat and throwing out a good. Oh, I did forget to do that. There we go. Good afternoon from overcast Horsham in Sussex. How you doing? Good to see you, Nick. Morning from Queensland, snacking after leaving May 4th event at Barcade. Kent, England, how you doing? Let's see here. Happy 4th of May, and if you are one with the Star War, then you may all live long and prosper. I don't think that. I think that's a mix-up of different genres there. Let's see here. Morning from chilly southern Iowa in full build mode, working on building the new Emperor's Children model before yard work this afternoon. Gotcha. Good morning, hobbyists from Gray, New York. How you doing, Jim? Trinda, how you doing? Good morning. Can you do a Zenithal with black and color like AP's Brain Matter Beige? Absolutely. I do it all the time. I do a lot of, I'll prime black, and if I'm doing, let's say, I don't know, something that I want to be like Blood Angels, let's say, I would then spray red over it. I usually do for Blood Angels specifically with my airbrush. I use 2 separate reds. I'd use a darker red and then a lighter red. Because the Army Painter airbrush paints come in those triads, it's very simple to just like have 2 matching reds. You either use, because those triads for Army Painter are actually 3 colors, as opposed to in the Fanatic line where their triads are 6 colors. But when you have the 3 colors, what I usually do is either use the dark one and then the mid one, or I use the mid one and the high one. Either way. But that's what I do. If you want really higher contrast, something that pop a lot more, you could use the the low one and then the high one and skip the mid one, but I usually don't go that hard. So, but yeah, it works out really, really well. The thing is that I do wish, and I keep bugging them about this, and I'm going to continue to bug them about this. I want Army Painter to make colored airbrush primers that match their rattle cans because I want an oak brown airbrush primer. Because in a perfect world, I'm using a dark brown as the primer and then doing red over the top of it, or even a dark purple, but dark brown probably works best. Um, and sometimes you're like painting something like, I don't know, if you're painting a bunch of skeletons, I don't want to have to prime them black and then spray them like a skeleton color and then go from there, maybe and highlight, off of that. I would rather start by using a primer that is basically some sort of, bone color, charred bone, or I don't know exactly which. I just want them to make airbrush primers that match not even necessarily all of the spray primers, but it would be nice. But at the very least, I need that dark brown, that oak brown for sure. Happy International Firefighter Day. There you go. Let's see here. Good morning from Southeast Asia. Love the channel. Starting off my day with cold brew and Cheerios before working on 1490 terrain. Nice. I am very much looking forward to. Did I do that? Did I set that up to work? I don't think I did. Nope. So I set up a web page so that I could show you guys stuff. No, that's not what I wanted. What's going on? All right, so we'll trash that. Yep. And then we'll make a new one. Or not. Okay, well, I guess not. Oh, OBS. You are the best, unfortunately. Yeah, I can't make a new. Why can't I make a new thing? I want to make a new one. I want to make a new layer, and I want it to. There, okay, there we go. I guess it. No, that didn't do it. Okay. I don't want a group. Why do I keep making groups? I'm not trying to make a group. I hate this. All right. Well, OBS just isn't working. I can't. The buttons, when I push them, they don't do anything. There we go. That's one. Push that button. Yes. Okay. I would like to make a new section. No? Okay. Well, anyway, we can't look at that then. So I was going to talk about how the 1490 Doom, the 1490 Doom game found, their crowdfunding is going live on Tuesday, and I'm looking forward to it. But I can't show it to you because OBS won't let me make anything. I don't know what's going on. OBS is broken as far as I can tell. Yeah, when I press the plus button to add a new source, it goes, I don't think so. I don't think you want to do that. I'm like, okay. Like, and I even updated OBS like last week. It didn't, usually what happens is OBS will be like, oh, hey, by the way, there's updates. And I'll be like, yeah, whatever. And because I don't have the time, because I'm usually doing it just before I have to go live. Well, I did this a while ago, and there was no alert this morning going, oh, by the way, there's an update. It just doesn't want to add a thing. So there you go. Okay. Anyway, if you're interested, if you type 1490 Doom Game Found into Google, you'll find it, because that's how I found it when I set up the browser over here with some stuff to show you, but then I can't show you. So I got that going for me, which is nice. The thing that excites me most about the Game Found is that they're going to be releasing STL files for the terrain. Because originally I was like getting ready to sort of do some scratch building and all that kind of stuff, but I got to be honest with you, these days I just kind of don't have that kind of time. And the stuff they showed off in the video for the buildings and things like that look good. So I would totally 3D print those babies and put them out there. So, why not? Let's see here. Good time of day from Clearwater, Florida. How you doing, Ralph? Let's hope we get some cat shenanigans today. Door is closed because Rex has been on one. Morning from a slowly drying out Yukon, Oklahoma. We had a lot of rain this week too. Yeah. Good to see you, BF Bulldog. Good morning from rainy, non-spray prime weather in Middle Tennessee. Yeah. Even in Wisconsin, it's almost spray time season all year now. Yeah, I mean, you can spray out in the middle of winter when it's snowing and stuff like that, but then you have to bring it in the house to let it dry, and that I don't want to do, because then it outgases and it stinks things up. Hear you loud and clear. Good. Good old OBS crashing. We haven't had one of those in a while. Well, now it's not crashing. It's just not allowing me to do things, which is cool. So I'm super happy about that. There's a new streaming thing. I forget what it's called. It's got a weird name, but there's a new streaming piece of software that people are talking about that looks kind of nice. And I may end up switching to that at some point, but I can't remember what the name of it is, so that's going to make it hard. Morning from Maine. Hello from Farmington Hills, Michigan. I hope all of you are in good health and spirit. Greeting from Isle of Wight on a rather dull day. Overcast, but not raining yet. Well, not raining's good. Morning from sunny Milwaukee. Not sure it's rattlecan season with this morning's temps. I mean, like I said, it's 51 right now, but it's supposed to be a high of 62 according to my weather app. Rattlecan with Colorforge Ghoul White onto a Fenris Miniatures Polar Bear Warrior. I guess there's the place nearby now that I can get. There's some store local-ish, I think, carries the Colorforge stuff now, I guess, but I haven't tried it yet. So, morning from sunny and surprisingly hot Saskatchewan. I hope the cat shenanigans have been well within acceptable levels. Rex has been a real pain in the butt lately, especially in the mornings. Oh my God, he was a little better today, but man, Saturday morning he was not cool. He was just from about 4 o'clock on, he was just like constantly like, hey, why aren't you guys up yet? Hey, why aren't you guys up yet? Because it's 4 o'clock in the morning. That's why. Good Sunday morning from Quebec. I'm currently playing Rogue Trader and having a blast in Camera. JP Got Rockets, how you doing? Good morning from rainy and gloomy Los Angeles. I'm trying to fill transition to digital rules and data sheets. What's the best way to handle multiple documents at once on a laptop while playing? I don't know. That's a good question. I have a tendency to use an iPad very frequently. Like late yesterday, Sam and I played Trench Crusade, and I had my iPad, and it's just very simple to be able to hop back and forth between the PDF viewer and the web browser, because that's where I had all my stats and stuff for my people in the Trench Crusade like army builder web thing. And so it's very simple just to swipe side to side, and it just goes from app to app pretty quickly. But as far as with a laptop, I would probably try to have multiple desktops. You know what I mean? Like you can do that. I think you can still do it in Windows. I don't know anymore. Windows is whatever. But I know like in Apple, in iOS, or Mac OS, I guess technically. In Mac OS, if you just use 3 fingers on the trackpad and just swipe, it kind of just goes from like desktop to desktop, and so you can have multiple things open that way. Currently assembling 2 warbands for Bill Making Stuff's Skirm in the Gutterlands. I think I saw a thumbnail for that. Afternoon from Italy, painting Human Defense Force for OPR. Nice. I think I'm getting a big box from OPR soon. I think I'm getting some sort of big box from OPR very soon, so I'm looking forward to that. It may almost be priming season, but it seems like the Space Wolf releases keep getting delayed. It's more than a little demotivating. I hadn't heard about that. I mean, I know about Space Wolf stuff. I didn't realize they'd been delayed. I wonder what happened there. Huh. Good afternoon from Glasgow. Just rattle-canned Chaplain on bike, 4 Goremongers, and Joseph Bugman. Nice. I've been working on 4 Goremongers on Twitch recently. I'll be working on them again tomorrow night. God willing, and the creek don't rise. They're okay. They're fine. I don't know. I didn't like building them as much as I liked doing the Sanctifiers, and I don't like painting them as much as I like the Sanctifiers, but they're still pretty good models. Like I said in that video, it's the first time in possibly forever that they made a two-player kill team box where I liked both of the forces. I just like the Sanctifiers so much more than the Goremongers, but I still like the Goremongers. It's more often than not, they make a 2-player box for kill team, and I'm like, these guys are okay. I'd never touch those guys. You know what I mean? It's been like that for a long time. While Uncle Adam chats to us, I'll be reviewing editing rules on my own first stab at game writing, following Snarlcast advice and getting down to a single page. Nice. Very cool. Got a new episode of Snarlcast going live tomorrow morning. So we got that going for us, which is nice. Made it to a Sunday show for the first time in a while. Well, good to see you, Jesse. Motor Breath Jazz, hello, hello. Good morning from Northern California, sorting paints for the next project. At first glance, I thought that said pants. I'm like, you're sorting pants? I mean, that's fine too. Sundered Psyche, how you doing? Painting the Gravedigger guy from Cursed City, nice. Will there be Bat Reps launching with the new game again this time? Vince will be doing a battle report with the next game, yes. And then we'll be doing all the regular videos, but Vince will be doing the battle report. Morning from sunny East Texas. Good morning from Middle Tennessee. Hoping to finish my trench system for Trench Crusade today. Nice. Game launch, Uncle Adam? Should be the 30th, I believe. Yes, Friday the 30th. Good morning from Santa Cruz. We are definitely getting better weather for spray prime. Hope you are well, Uncle Adam. Hello, chat. How you doing, Cliff? Speaking of the game, in theory, I should be getting the proof. I got the what do you call it? I should be getting the proof tomorrow. They finally on Saturday were like, because we ordered it not Thursday of this week, but Thursday of last week. And they sat on it for whatever reason, I don't know, for like more than a week. And I was like, ugh. And then finally they're like, okay, well, it's sent out. I'm like, cool. And then they're like, yeah, and we paid $107 or whatever for next day air. But next day air evidently doesn't mean Sunday. That means if you ship it on Saturday, then they won't get it till Monday. And I'm like, okay. So anyway, sometime on Monday, I should get the copy of the proof, and then I should be able to look at it, and hopefully everything's cool. Being in Australia, it's priming weather all year round. I mean, I can prime with my airbrush all year round, but with terrain and stuff, I generally like to do spray primer, just because it makes a really good base on terrain. You have a tendency to beat up your terrain more than you beat up your models, I find. So, yeah. Morning from Kansas City, putting the finishing touches on Space Marines today and have my first game with Painted Army scheduled for this week. Nice. Doing a little hobbying here this morning, maybe mowing, and then off to see Santa in Huntsville tonight. Huh. Morning from rainy New Hampshire. Primer season is like seed starting, sure. Good morning from gloomy Marlborough, Massachusetts, painting some Space Station Zero terrain, finally nice enough to spray prime outside. Gives my brain cell a break, absolutely. Good morning from rainy Connecticut. Was planning on spraying today, but weather had other plans. You don't want to do it in the rain, for sure. Morning from Cleveland, working on some Trench Crusade terrain this morning. Nice. Sam and I were talking about it again, and we're just not sure if we want to make trenches for Trench Crusade. It could just be because we're old men and we're stuck in our ways, but it also seems like, especially in a game that is generally 4 turns, it seems to us like it's gonna be far less like quick and deadly because you're almost always going to be in a situation where like you have full cover, or sometimes you just don't even have line of sight. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's a good question. I've got the STLs because I supported at that level in the Kickstarter for Trench Crusade to get the STLs, the terrain STLs. So I do want to try building maybe some trenches, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Plus, then you're like kind of stuck depending on how you do it with your board. I don't know. I got to look into it more and think about it. But it's something that I would like to maybe give a try to. But on the other hand, like, a lot of World War II or World War I was not done in trenches. And I know it's called Trench Crusade, but still, like, there's not even really, most interesting to me is I can't find anywhere in the rules where there are special rules for trenches. There's just like, oh yeah, here's a bunch of rules and stuff, and that makes sense. But there's nothing that say, but when you're in a trench, this happens, or this special rule or anything. It's just like, I don't know. That's why we've really not been, and also the fact we don't have any trenches, trench terrain already. That's why we've been playing just regular, on a regular board. So, So if you're a person who's thinking about Trench Crusade, but you're like, I don't have any trenches, that's okay. Just FYI. Trying to hold Night Haunt army yesterday, 65 and sunny. Now for the Ghost Juice. Nice. That'll speed through that real quick. Good morning from Southern Arizona. How you doing? Hexads, kinda. I guess they're sort of, they call them, uh, what do they call them? Sometimes they call them color triad families, but color families is becoming more of a thing. Um, got the BattleTech Mercenaries expansion. That's pretty cool. And a game mat for Halo Flashpoint. Fun. I have a 6mm castle cleaned up and ready for priming, although it might take another day or two given the forecast. If you keep hassling, if anyone can make it happen, you can. If you keep hassling, if anyone can make it. Oh, for the color primers, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Railcan primers have tooth and are formulated to stick to any surface. If you prime with airbrush, what do you add to the paint? I don't know what you mean. When I use my airbrush, so I use airbrush primer. I use the matte black almost all the time from Army Painter. So they make a special airbrush primer that is also designed to stick to stuff. I just don't know if overall it sticks as well as Rattlecan when you're doing terrain. Also, when you're using a Rattlecan, it sprays a lot more than an airbrush does, which is great for terrain. Kind of sucks for models, though, because I feel like I'm wasting a lot of paint when I'm spraying just a couple of models. If I'm spraying a whole bunch of models, like an army or something like that, maybe a different story. But for me, I don't ever really play army games much. I mostly play skirmish games, and I feel like Rattlecan is too much paint for a skirmish game. It has a tendency to get all over the place and stuff like that. Whereas if I'm using, if let's say this was a miniature and not just a USB plug, being able to airbrush and keep it on the model and not, you know what I mean? Like for me, that's a preference for models. But for terrain, I generally prefer, I can still, if in a pinch, I can still prime a piece of terrain with my airbrush. It just takes longer, obviously, because you've got a smaller spray area and stuff like that. But yeah, I almost never use Rattlecan on miniatures these days, unless I, for some reason, just have a whole bunch of them, or I need a specific color for that. It'd just be best if it was primed in a specific color that wasn't either black, gray, or white. You know what I mean? Seward, Nebraska checking in, painting Infinity, got a game in 4 hours. Nice. Prime a lot with Krylon Dark Camo Brown. Dark Camo Brown is awesome stuff, man. That's one of my favorites for using Rattlecan. I know you don't want to give a lot of details. Oh yeah, that's to Nick. OBS is BS, kinda sometimes. Yeah. Working on High Elf on Dragon. I wanted to say Dragoon, but that's not right. For Wonderfest. I don't think I know what Wonderfest is. It's my first contest. Okay, it's a paint contest. Cool. Can a model that starts with contrast, speed paint, speed display, quality? I think if you want it to, you can, sure. Molly, how you doing? OBS is short for there's obviously better software. The problem is, like I said, that I don't know of anything other than, like I said, I just recently came across a couple different channels that were talking about this new streaming software, but it's still kind of in beta. So there's an update every time you open OBS? Very frequently, yes, but there wasn't today, so I know it's not that. Tyler, also give a huge shout out to Uncle Adam Vince's work in Snarlcast, which gave good direction suggestions for building idea into content. It's it's kind of what we hope for people to take away from the podcast, honestly. Almost there we go. There we go. Been finding a lot of hardware store flat colors lately. Do you reckon they're doing it to tap into the hobby market? I don't know. I mean, maybe it's possible. Keep seeing people talk about this Doom game. What's the big hubbub about? 1490 Doom is a skirmish game. It's very unique in that you have 3 models per side, so that makes it very accessible to people. They don't have to go, oh, I got to build and paint like 10 guys or 15 guys or even 5. It's 3 people, and it's played on a 2-foot by 2-foot board, but technically it's a 2-foot circle. Now you might go, well, that sounds stupid. Why would you bother doing it on a circle? And I initially thought it seemed like a gimmick, but it's because of the way you deploy. So the point of the game is by the end of the game to have a model or more models or whatever as high up as possible. The idea behind 1490 Doom is that there is this miasma, this stuff that they call the creeping death. It's this mist, this fog that is coming up from the earth, coming up from the ground. And it's been slowly kind of getting higher and higher and higher over the last several months or whatever, you know. And so you were trying to get out of there, you know what I mean? Because it will kill you. So the game is about fighting each other, but the game is also about climbing and getting to the highest point possible and knocking people off of ledges and stuff like that. So yeah, there's people with crossbows and things like that here and there, but it's not exactly as much of a shooting game, but it can be. But there's also a lot of rules about climbing and falling and jumping and stuff like that. But the thing is that when you make your board, the tallest part doesn't necessarily be in the center. It could be on any side. So when you're deploying, you are deploying, but your model has to be 5 inches away from another model. So if it was on a square and you were always 5 inches away, some people will be further away from the middle part of the board by being closer to the corners. And so if it's circular, if you're 5 inches away from somebody, you're all equidistant to the center of the board. So it all kind of comes down to, and again, if the tall part's not in the center, but over to one side, well, the person who gets to pick their deployment first, probably going to be closer to that. And then someone else who wants to do it next is going to be 5 inches away from them. But if it was like 5 inches away was in the corner, you know what I mean? That's why the circle is kind of important. Plus, I've seen people put it on like a lazy Susan and you can spin the board around, which is actually sort of nice. Don't do it too fast or your dudes will fly off. But yes, anyway, that's part of the deal that's interesting about the game. And the rule system is interesting and the art's interesting and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I've been talking about it. I thought it was pretty cool. But it's called 1490 Doom. Tried the Pro Acryl airbrush primer, but was disappointed. It would easily scratch off. His Army Painter primer, pretty good. The Army Painter black matte, I mostly use matte black. I have used the white a couple of times. I don't know that I've ever used gray. I have a bottle of the gray, but I've never used it. But 97% of everything that I prime with an airbrush is done with matte black from Army Painter, the matte black airbrush primer. And it's the best primer I've ever used. I don't know if I ever had Monument stuff scratch off, but I did have it sometimes lift a little bit. So I paint really wet because I use a lot of speed paints and washes and stuff like that. So I would prime a model with my the airbrush primer stuff from Monument, and it didn't happen every time, but sometimes when I would go through and I would give it like overnight to cure, it wasn't like I was doing it and then immediately painting on top of it. I would give it, I never do that. I always at least give it overnight before I start painting. And I would go through and start, you know, like putting on like a heavy wash in a spot to darken it down, or I would be using a speed paint or something like that. And every once in a while I'd have a little bit of the primer lift off, like come off, and then you'd have like a spot of gray plastic or something like that. But I've never had that with the airbrush primer from Army Painter. It's just like a rock. I don't know. And it's a good surface. It's a nice surface to work on top of. I've been really happy with it. Let's see here. Krylon, People Doom, Pro Grill. There we go. Okay. Raining today in the DMV. Should have primed yesterday. The one that is up and coming might not be free for too much longer. The real solution is an ATEM deck. I have an ATEM deck in the basement. I haven't used it in a long time. I never used it. I mean, I'm not switching cameras much. It's more about switching sources, and the ATEM I don't think works for that. So yeah, I can switch sources currently. I can go here and go there and go other places, I suppose. I don't really have any other scenes open up. It's just for whatever reason, when I go to this website one here where I should be able to put in a new source, I can't for some reason right now. I don't know why. Just hit the button again, nothing. Hit the little plus button, which is how you add a new source. Nope. Anyway. Now I can't go back to the main screen. There we go. Jesus, I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so there we go. We did, yeah, let's, and even if the new thing, and whatever it's called, I can't think of what the new one's called, if it's not free, as long as it works better than OBS, I'll be like, I will pay it. Thank you. That's fine. But I can't think of what it's called now. Spray prime my Gene Stealer cults last week. Mr. Adam, have you used Army Painter spray cans, specifically white? I've used the spray cans. I don't know that I've ever used white because, like I said, I almost never prime in white. I've used red and blue and like a military green, but it's been a minute because I just don't. Yeah, I don't have it. Well, do I have any spray cans? I don't think I think I do, but I think the last spray can I have from them currently is kind of old. And you always got to be wary about old spray cans, especially if you've left them in the garage over the winter. Don't ever use those. I mean, unless you live someplace where it doesn't get cold. But around Wisconsin, if you leave a spray can in the winter, in the spring, throw it away. Don't yeah. But I don't think I've ever used the white. Trying to play Trench Crusade at 150 scale because I'm not a fan of how small the models can be for the sake of painting. Had a local really get mad that I wanted to do a different scale. I mean, I guess getting mad seems dumb, but I can understand, like, if everything is bigger on your models than their models, I guess it comes down to whether you're doing a bigger size of the bases. If you're enlarging the models but also enlarging the bases, then that would be problematic. If you were enlarging the models but not enlarging the bases, then I wouldn't mind, I guess. But I don't know. Some people are weird. A lot of people are weird, as it turns out. Let's see here. Rex the Terrible, time to print him a small Viking helmet. He would never wear a small Viking helmet or a big one. Is it me or is the sound quite low today? My YouTube and system volume is highest. I mean, all my levels are up, when I talk, I'm hitting in the yellow, so I should be okay. Hello from Portland, Oregon. The downside to nice weather is that now that yard work is eating into my hobby time. Good time of day all. Did rooms get added to the TMX block? Did the TMX block get sold out? I haven't heard from anybody. Did they say that? Have you tried? Because I haven't heard anything about that. I think. Did I have a thing on there? There's a date coming up, which might be tomorrow. Last day to book with the group rate is May 5, which is tomorrow. So if I should probably post about that today, but if the group rate, if that block is, if they're telling you there's no more room in the block, that's first I've heard of it. But it's a possibility, I guess. Would have been nice, I guess, if she would have mentioned that, but I don't know. Maybe they just go, well, that's all of them. Skirm in the Gutterlands is Bill Making Stuff's new game. Yeah, like I said, I think I heard about that. Milder weather means yard work and fresh air and exercise, the bane of hobbyists everywhere. Yeah. Let's see here. Portable USB extra screen. Can get one on Amazon for like $70. It's my standard tabletop setup. Oh, cool. The only yard work I do is to shift the fallen palm fronds aside. Oh, yeah. I've loved Snarlcast. Thanks so much for making it. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. It's doing pretty decently well. Found an old world group that play at my local shop. Cool with proxies, 3D prints, as long as we pay the hobby tax. Support the store and buy stuff. I'm quite happy. I mean, you should. If you play at a local store, you should support the store. It just kind of helps in them staying open so that you have a place to play. I'm a big fan of that myself. One of the reasons why I have so many of those little paint handles, the GW paint handles, is because I used to go to play at the local store a lot more, and you get done, and you'd be like, well, I'll take another paint handle, because you're helping to support the store. And as it turns out, very frequently I need a lot of paint handles because I'll have multiple projects going, and sometimes it's just nicer. I mean, it's easy to take them off, but sometimes it's also nice to not have to worry about it. Just keep printing. Just keep printing. Just keep printing. There you go. GW isn't alone in having product delays. MCP and Star Wars both had their May releases delayed, citing various political shenanigans. I'm sure it's probably them trying to figure out what the tariff situation is, since no one knows, it seems. But yeah. I know behind the times, but I just heard about Spearhead for Age of Sigmar. Do you think that's why they killed off Warcry? No. I had a bunch of people mention that in the comment or the video that I did about Warcry. They're not the same thing. Like, basically, okay, there's a lot of parallels in the way that Games Workshop does things. So you've got your 40K and your Age of Sigmar. Those are your two army games. Then you've got Kill Team and Warcry. Those are the sci-fi and fantasy version, of each type of game. And then but before that, you've got Combat Patrol and Spearhead. Spearhead is basically the fantasy version of Combat Patrol. It's the Age of Sigmar version of Combat Patrol. So it's not a skirmish game. It's not designed to be, and it's just, yeah. So I don't think that that's the case. If that was the case, it'd be saying like, oh well, the Combat Patrol, they got rid of Kill Team because of Combat Patrol. They're not the same thing. But that's kind of the way it is with Spearhead. Spearhead is basically the Age of Sigmar version of Combat Patrol. And again, it's designed to get you into Age of Sigmar, just like Combat Patrol is designed to get you into 40K. It says that in the 40K book. It used to be that Kill Team was like, oh, if you do Kill Team, then you can eventually move those models into 40K. And of course, now they don't want you to really do that particularly much, because the models are all different and everything like that. The rules are completely different. The 2018 version of Kill Team, the rules were quite a bit like 40K. Like, you could definitely play Kill Team, and then when you move to 40K, you'd be like, oh, this kind of makes sense. I get this. Okay, this is, yeah. But with the new versions of Kill Team, they're very different than the way 40K plays. And same with Age of Sigmar and Warcry. So yeah, I mean, Warcry still might come back. I don't know. It's a very strange thing that they're doing. Like, they've gone between versions of Kill Team before and never just decided to put everything on Kill Team as online only on the website and all that kind of stuff. So it's still possible, but I hope that they do. Of course, I hope they also don't screw it up real bad. So I guess there's that thing to think about too. Like, when they went from version 1 to version 2 of Warcry, I was like, hey, these are not huge changes, and I think they're good changes. And whereas when they went from version 1 to version 2 of Kill Team, I hated what they did with the new version. So if they do that, going from second to third of Warcry, completely changing the rules and making it crazy and making it so you can't have a compendium anymore and you can only buy these, then I'm done with Warcry. So it's the way it works. We'll see how it goes. All right. Hobby Tax, Cleveland, printing. I know I'm behind the time. I read that one. Spearhead. Hobby ADD is a heck of a thing, working on Guard, Sisters, and Blood Angels this morning. I mean, yeah, that'll happen. Good morning from Indianapolis. I'm working on Brine Blood Marauders for War Machine. Oh, that's cool. Snallcast has been fun listening, inspiring to finish one of my several game-making projects this year. I'm out to take a look at the one on not starting with your magnum opus to that end. Yeah. I think that was an important episode to some degree, because I've talked to so many people over the years who were like, whoops, just clunked the mic. Oh, I've got this amazing idea. I'm going to do this thing and it's going to be awesome and everything. And I'm like, maybe don't start there. You know what I mean? Like, it's like it's like saying I'm gonna start running next week, and then and the first thing I'm gonna do is a marathon. Like, maybe try just jogging for a while and then sign up for a 5K, something like that. I don't know. Let's see here. Primed minis the other night, hoping to get a Majestic 13 army started today from Jackson, Florida. Well, that's cool. Or Jacksonville, I'm assuming. Working on my base for my Necron from McFarlane Games. That's cool. Contractors have been known to come and mow a lawn mostly underwater during the wet season and proudly send us a customer survey. Weird. Looking to prime the mini of the month in Meridian, Ohio before I head to the airport for our anniversary trip to Disneyland. So there you go. That's cool. Good morning from New Jersey. Looking to head to a local Dollar General for those makeup sponges. I like to paint up a Blood Bowl team. The slap shop would work well with the orcs, I think. Do a test just in case. I didn't do this because I hadn't heard about it, but some people in the comments about those sponges said it is better to get them a bit wet and then squeeze as much moisture out of them so they're just a bit damp. I don't know if that'll matter for what we're trying to do with them. I think if you're using it to try to like lightly blend colors like Rob was doing in his videos, then using a slightly damp sponge might make sense. I don't know if it'll give us a big benefit in the trying to make a black and white Zenithal, but it might. So if you're having trouble or whatever, maybe think about that. But that I didn't try. So but otherwise, yeah, it will definitely give you a more contrasty, almost cell shaded kind of cartoony. Somebody in the comments referred to I wanted to do miniatures that looked like Sin City, like that movie slash graphic novel. And I'll be honest, yeah, that would work perfectly for that type of look for sure. Does Trench Crusade need special rules for trenches? It's not like Warhammer has special rule for Warhammers. I don't know that that's the same thing, but maybe. I don't know. Check out Ash's bat rep of the last war campaign with trenches. That was an amazing board someone built for him. Oh, Last War. Oh, duh. Like the from like for Forbidden Psalm Last War. When I was looking at that, I thought it was his last war campaign. I didn't realize it was his last war being being a title. Yeah. Trench Crusade really does look interesting. It's a fun game. We've been really enjoying it. Me and Sam. And the models are also pretty awesome too, but you can also kit bash and do whatever you want that way too. Here in Southeast Alaska, we get about 250-ish days of rain a year. That's a lot of rain. The Tongass National Forest is the largest temperate rainforest. Hardly ever priming weather. Yeah, that does sound like there's not a lot of priming weather. That's a good point. Start of spray prime season is also hay fever season. Yeah. I had last week. I had some pretty leaky eyes, is what I had. So yeah. I suppose if you follow real life World War II ground to a halt with trenches, so a skirmish game that does that would be boring. Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah. My go-to primer is Duplicolor Sandable Primer. I think when I first got into the hobby, I was using Duplicolor Sandable Auto Primer. I think back in the day, like black. Yeah. Rattlecans have a small amount of acetone to eat the paint onto the model. Whoops. Can you comment? Can you comment on the square-based guys speaking your obviously copyrighted per chow? I guess this is the first I'm hearing of it. I know I met Rob for the first time in person at Adepticon this year, but Val I've known for years. I mean, if they want to, it's just a word. Everybody knows that I came up with it, but I'm just saying, Rattlecans have a small one. I just read that one. Bought an airbrush basically just for priming. Game changer for an apartment dweller. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I've had people be like, "Oh, I can't airbrush because I live in an apartment," and that's not the case at all. You can totally if you use the same type of primer that Vince uses, which is some sort of a lacquer primer, I think, then that will cause fumes, which you want to vent outside. That I would maybe not use in an apartment. I wouldn't use that in a house personally, but that's, I think he's got his stuff vented outside. My airbrushing is not vented outside, but it's also just regular acrylics shot through an airbrush from an air compressor. Now, the air compressor is, hence due to its name, compressing air from the room. So when you spray an airbrush with regular, acrylic airbrush paint through, your air compressor, there's no fumes. There are particulates that float around as the paint bounces off your model or whatever, and that's why you wear a respirator so you don't get paint down in your lungs, but you don't have to worry about fumes. Now, the particulate, if you spray every day, quite a bit, over time, your dining room table might get covered in paint dust, which you can wipe away. But if you just even spray in a box, like if you get a big box that something gets shipped from Amazon or whatever, and just use that and maybe put a light in it so it's a little brighter in there, but you don't have to. There's a little clip-on LED lights that can be quite bright, or whatever you're going to do, and just spray with that as like your back, your area to catch. You could spray anywhere in your house and just take that box and then put it back into a closet or whatever and put your airbrush stuff in it. And when you want to bring it out again, you put it out. There are airbrushes nowadays, they're, I don't know, 60, $70, and they have a built-in compressor that's like, rechargeable, battery powered. They work just fine. So I see a lot of people online who are like, well, I can't ever airbrush. You can, as it turns out. I mean, unless you live in a clean room, maybe at, I don't know, NVIDIA or Intel or something like that. Yeah, airbrushing is not nearly as difficult and grungy and dangerous. It's really not any of those things. Again, as long as you're doing regular sprays. If you're doing regular acrylic paints that you're shooting through your airbrush, no problems. Particulates, yes, but again, you wear a mask and it's fine. Streamlabs, no. It's a weird name. I can't think of what it is called. I'll have to look it up. The streaming software. It's like from a completely separate company. Afternoon from Puckle Church. Working on Mantix Snow Trolls today. Nice. Mainly using Pound Store gray, white, or black primers for my models. Gotcha. Morning from Silver Lake, Wisconsin. Starting skirmish game Warlord Descendant from Black Oath. Good. Looks good. Cool for solo. Cool. Priming in Furnace Marines. Neat. 250,000 subscribers. That's awesome. Oh, yeah. I hit 250,000 subscribers end of January, I think. Use my airbrush mostly on my aircraft and military models, almost never when it comes to gaming models. See, I use it all the time on that's what I use predominantly for my miniatures, yeah. Best color for priming Emperor's Children. I'm going with the pink and black color scheme with a little Vallejo Galaxy mixed in for some excess. I would start black. I always do, though. No single rooms for TMX just now. Huh. So you could get so if, what do you mean no single rooms? So you can get multiple rooms, or do you mean multiple nights? I guess I don't know. Maybe a dumb question, but what stops you from adding paint colors to your airbrush primer, assuming you start with white? I think it would maybe change the composition of the primer to some degree. It's a good question. I like where your head's at. Like if I just took a bunch of oak brown regular paint and mixed it into the white, it would take a lot. And I think if I just mix it into black, I don't know. That's a good question. I'll ask Adam from Army Painter, because that is a good question. Like, I don't know enough about airbrush primer. I know it's not just airbrush paint. I know it's designed to it's like a surface etching kind of stuff too, so it sticks to the plastic better, which is why you use it versus just spraying black, airbrush paint over the model and saying, hey, it's primed. Like, it's a different thing. But that's a good question. I'll have to ask. Any tips on approaching a model that intimidates you? I'm a new Dark Angels player and need to paint up the lion, but don't want to mess it up. If you've painted other things in the past, then you've already at least gotten the ball rolling. If this is the first model you've ever painted, and I see people do this all the time, they get really excited about getting into the hobby, and they go buy some big honking amazing model, and then they're like, ooh, I don't want to, you know what I mean? Like, this is a I don't know, $120 model, and this is my first ever model. I'm going to screw this up. Yeah, you probably are. You know what I mean? So it's better to kind of work on some cheap stuff, or work on some stuff that you buy used off of eBay just to practice and get things rolling. But if you've already been painting stuff for a while, then I would just tell you to kind of go slowly and don't worry if you screw it up, because technically you can't. At the end of the day, if you really want to, you could go back and strip it and start over again. So don't worry about that too much. But yeah. 1490 Doom is what I call King of the Hill with miniatures. Kind of, yeah. The paint Mexium, probably medium. The paint medium may not mix properly with the printer with a primer medium. Probably best to add ink or pigment. Interesting. That's potentially. Fear of messing up a model will keep you from enjoying it. Just start. And VJ Morph is also right here, that you can always come back to a model and add extra touches later. I still do that myself. I'll still come back to some models and be like, you know what, I can make these a little better. So you can always go back and be like, I'm going to touch this part up and clean this part up and maybe redo this a little bit. You can always go back and do that, as long as you don't get way too put the paint on initially way too thick, right? Just finished priming my Iron Sultanate warband for Trench Pilgrim or Trench Crusade. Cool. Listening while riding in pouring down rain. Just stopped and wanted to say hello. Can't watch and ride at the same time. I mean, no, I wouldn't think so. I hope not. Wanted both sides to be 101st. Yeah, I wanted both sides to be 150% bases and measurements included. Well, are you making all the models? So you're going to play against somebody and you've got both teams and you've built them and everything like that, and they're both scaled up 150%? That shouldn't be a problem, I wouldn't think. I could see, again, like if my models are 150% scale and yours are 100% scale, and I also blew up the bases and stuff as well, then I'd be like, well, but yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. It's weird. If you were enlarging models but not bases, it would be terribly impractical to play with them. Depends on the size. If the models were already because sometimes bases are a little bigger than the model needs to have, and then sometimes they're not. So there's that too. Hello from Rainy Nova, first love show, working on some Chaos Space Marines. Well, thanks, Ben. Morning from Rhode Island, painting Steel Rift Authority. Nice. More interested in scaling games down for speed of painting and probability, especially if I have STLs. That makes sense. Coming into winter here, been raining, and I was still out planting trees in the front paddock today, hoping the weather storms don't strip them. I don't know what a paddock is. I mean, I've heard the word before, but I don't know exactly what the definition of a paddock is. I'll have to look that up. Got to get at that Steel Rift starter box. So many projects, so little time. It's true. Pull the trigger, and so happy to say that I now have a big enough table and now have a 4x4 ZM set up at home. ZM. Zone Mortalis. It took me a second. Sorry. Compared to other industries, GW shouldn't have any worry of the tariffs. I'm in the furniture industry. My company imports from multiple countries with raging tariffs and severely impacts production. GW gets all their cardboard and boxes and printing, at least currently that I last knew, from China. So getting stuff from China to the UK probably won't cause tariffs. Now the question is whether, I don't know how the tariffs work, is whether because the stuff gets put together and all that kind of stuff, and the plastic's put in the boxes, and then it gets sent from the UK. I think there's some UK tariffs, aren't there too? Or I feel like they're tariffs be going off everywhere. I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. I we had to raise the prices on our books a little bit for tariffs, because the company that does the printing for Wargame Vault basically raised the cost per page, because they're an American company and they're printing in America, but they're buying, I believe, Canadian paper, and then that's a whole thing, and it's so I don't know, and hopefully they won't go up again, but we'll see. Recently got into Kill Team and I'm loving it. Well, good. Let's see. Do you think we'll see a better version of Combat Patrol in the near future? We'll have to wait till next year. If they're going to update Combat Patrol, I'm sure that they'll do it next summer. So summer of 26, because summer of 26 is when the next version of 40K is already going to be out, because it'll be, 26 will be 11th edition. So if they're going to make a new version of Combat Patrol, they'll do it then. And if I had to guess, I would not be surprised even a little bit if the original launch Combat Patrols that they've been going through and replacing get kicked out. I would not be surprised at all if they were let's say Dark Angels. There was the original Dark Angels Combat Patrol, which came with a Redemptor Dreadnought and Primaris Chaplain and some suppressors and some regular Primaris guys. It's like 10 models or whatever. And then the newer version that came out when they came out with the Codex for Dark Angels is like 19 or 20 models, I think, like that. And they're just all Primaris dudes. And it's really boring. I I would not be surprised at all if next summer when they come out with 11th edition, if they were like, oh yeah, we're updating Combat Patrol and doing this kind of stuff, but it's only for the new versions, not the original versions. That would not surprise me. So we'll see how that goes. I guess I don't know what you mean also by a better version of Combat Patrol. Like, because it's basically Combat Patrol is basically just 40K, with slightly different. Not even the stats aren't even that different. It's more like secondary objectives and things like that. It's just smaller, um, size, obviously, and stuff like that. So I don't know what they would do to make it better, like more balanced or something like that. It's they'll never make anything balanced. I mean, no, we can't. It's not a thing you can do. But I don't know. That's a good question. Ordered a book from independent U.S. publisher D&D, given a 7 to 9 delivery estimate to the UK. Took 15 days, possibly shipping delay due to ships not as full these days. Could be. I don't know. I prefer the label Hobby Butterfly. Oh, that's fun. Not starting with your magnum opus, not a bad idea, but what if you only have the one idea? You should get a second one. Better late than never. Had to rush home always. Same story with ladies always late. I don't know what that was in relation to. Hobby Butterfly. Working with slightly damp dry brush seems to work well, so maybe the sponges are similar. Yeah, I think that's a possibility too. I could see that. I was thinking about trying Colorforge Gray Sear Match. I have a Bane Blade and Dorns to prime. Game fighting in the trenches reminds me of Space Hulk. Well, but the thing is, you can't go from like to get to another hallway or to shoot something in another hallway. You have to actually go so you can get. Whereas with the trench game, the idea is that you can be in the trench and they can't see you at all, but you can also step on up on that step, and then now you can see to shoot. But now you are technically also visible in cover, but still visible. That's the way most of those trench games kind of work, is they have that step up, you know. But otherwise, yeah, if you didn't have that step up at all, then yeah, it would make sense that you would be like walking around like it was the hallways in Space Hulk. I get that. I always prime with airbrush. Vallejo Black is king in my opinion. I used to use the Vallejo airbrush primers, and I stopped using them because those I would sometimes get to rub off when I didn't mean to. I mean, you almost never mean to rub off primer, but yeah, I went from back in the day using Vallejo and and then using Monument, and now it's just Army Painter airbrush paint, because the airbrush primer, the matte black, is I I think it's like bulletproof. I don't know. I spray prime in the snow and rain and all in between. I've never had a problem if I bring them indoor quickly. That's the problem. That's the issue. Like, I don't want to, because I've had people be like, "Oh yeah, you can do this outside. It's fine." Yeah, but you can't leave it outside. You can't, because the way that I normally do my spray priming, if I'm using a rattle can, is I do it outside, spray, 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 spray. Then I take it and I bring it into the garage, and I leave it in the garage to outgas over the course of 24 hours or whatever, because it's got a, like, the propellant kind of gets trapped in the paint when it hits the model, and it needs to outgas. It needs to like kind of bubble up and go through them and then dissipate. So when you pick up the thing, like if you hold it to your face, you can be like, that smells like spray paint, but it doesn't stink up the house. I don't want that chemical outgassed in my house. So if I spray it and then bring it inside my house, that basically, I should have just sprayed in the house at that point. You know what I mean? Like, it's, well, maybe not so much, but it defeats the purpose, is the point. Because if you take, like, let's say it's super cold and you go outside and you've warmed up your can and like a bowl of like warm water or whatever, and then you spray the model, it's -12 or whatever, and you're out there spraying, spraying, spraying. And then you take that and you put it in the garage and leave it in there overnight, and you'll come back and pick it up tomorrow. It might not even be completely dry by tomorrow, because paint has a tendency to dry slower when it's cold. You'll also very frequently get this like kind of orange peel kind of bumpiness to your models, or terrain or whatever, and that's not also helpful. So yeah, so that's why I don't do it. Blue 9, how you doing? Anyone use Mr. Hobby surfacing primer? It contains lacquer. Vince V and Ninjon use those. Yeah, they both swear by it, but they're also fancy, you know, and also must have some sort of thing that like, because the lacquers will make fumes, so you want that blown out of your house. Vince and Ninjon say that Mr. Hobby enamel primer is excellent, but I don't want to deal with enamels and the extra precautions. Same here. Yep. Chow is a Midwesternism. I've used it for years. Just can't use it in my video production because some guy from Wisconsin. I mean, you know. Said a box fan blowing out in an open window and airbrush in front of that. I mean, you don't even have to, really. Like, that's the thing. If you're using the enamels or the lacquers, that might help, sure. But if you're just like doing regular airbrushing, you're really honestly just better off just having a box so that if there's any kind of overspray, it just lands in the box and then you're not going to have to worry about it. What I do is I bought one of those things from Amazon years back, and it's like you can fold it up almost like a little briefcase or whatever, but when you unfold it, and it's got a fan in there, it's got a filter in there, it's got lights in there, you plug it in the wall, you turn it on, and it sucks all the stuff into the filter and then blows out the back your exhaust. And I just assumed that the filter wouldn't catch everything. But, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, I've had that thing in the same spot in the basement for years. And the 4-inch or whatever hole on the back that you could hook to like a dryer vent type, you know, hose, one of those. I think it's 4-inch, maybe it's 3-inch, but it's 3 or 4 inches. Anyway, that thing, I don't have it hooked to anything. So it's just blowing against a wall, and it's a white painted wooden wall. And there's probably this much space between the back of the you know, the exhaust thingy and the wall. And I just assumed over time I would get this like kind of gray circle from the particulate that wasn't getting caught by the filter hitting the wall on its white wall. I looked again earlier this week when I was working on those blackout guys that I primed up and stuff, and I looked back there and there's no circle back there. So the filter, which again, I haven't ever changed the filter yet either. That filter's been in there for at least 4 years, maybe longer. When the heck did I get that darn thing? I'm going to look it up right now because I think I got it on Amazon, so I should be able to find. If I go here and I go to orders and I type in, let's see if I just type in hood and see if I find it. Oh, yeah, no, it says, oh, do you mean you wanted to search for good? No, I didn't. Hood. Stupid. Hoodies. No, all right. Well, let's look for airbrush. This is very exciting. I apologize, but I know. There we go. Oh, they called it a booth, not a hood. That makes sense, I guess. 22. So I ordered that thing in May 7th of 2022. So I've had it not even 4 years, but still, yeah. Never gotten a weird paint circle on the wall. So that filter has been working great. When I spray something by a rattle can, I do it in my garage with a fan going, then open the door once finished to air out all the fumes, matter of minutes. Sure. Oh yeah, no, when you're doing the rattle can stuff, especially if you blow it out, that's fine. That's fine. But you do, like, I just do it in the driveway. Sometimes I am kind of like, I open the door to the garage and I'm kind of like right on the edge of the door area, so it kind of blocks some wind, but it's still also not in the garage, you know. Um, and then But then when it's time for it to sit there and outgas and dry, then I just leave it in the garage and close the door. Airbrushing acrylics is not remotely as toxic as enamels. Also true. A lot of mini spray booths you can get online these days that have vent tubes to put out the window. Some have Lazy Susans. I had to get a Lazy Susan extra. Well, maybe it did come with one, but it was too small or short or something. I don't know. I went to some hobby store, Michael's maybe? I don't remember. I went to some hobby store and bought a Lazy Susan thing for decorating cakes. So it's a little taller. Um, and then I guess you put a cake on it and then you can spin it while you're putting frosting on it. I don't know. Anyway, it works also great for this too. And it's just, but I think it did maybe come with like a really small, like flat one or something like that, but that works fine too. I have a colored circle on my window screen mesh where I vented spray outside through one of those booth things, those airbrush booths. You don't even need a window with airbrush hoods. They have a filter and you can exhaust to a piece of cardboard. Filter catches particulate and you're good. Yeah, I've seen people also that will, and I don't know if this is probably overkill, but I knew somebody who had like the vent, like the tube would go out into like a garbage can basically that they filled with crumpled up paper towel because they thought then it would catch the particulate, but I don't know if it ever did anything, you know, because again, the filter does a lot of work. Better to start painting and make mistakes than to never start. Also true. Meld is the name of that's the one, Meld. I knew it was a word. I was like, mesh? No, Meld is the name of the newish OBS alternative that some people are gushing about. That's you got it. Yes, Meld. Like I said, in the word, in my head, it was the word mesh. And I'm like, well, that's not right. Meld, which is also a strange thing to call up streaming software. But I saw a couple of videos about it and I'm like, So I don't know. If stripping a resin mini with the same stripper work as on plastic, I use Simple Green. Yeah, I mean, I use LA's Totally Awesome, which is this bright yellow stuff that you get from the dollar store. But yeah, I've used it on resin. The thing you wouldn't want, there's certain things that you can use on metal that I would not use on plastic or resin. Brake cleaner, brake fluid, or some. I don't use that. Oven cleaner, I wouldn't use that on plastic or resin. But I've know in the past people use it on metal because they're like, what's it going to do? But yeah, LA's Totally Awesome is, I think, non-toxic. Like I wouldn't drink it, but I think it's relatively non-toxic. And it works pretty well. I only know paddock related to fenced circle you ride or keep horses in. That sounds like a paddock, yeah. A big fan of the Army Painter's Color Primer sprays. I can start with them and do the rest of the triad with the airbrush. That first spray layer saves a lot of time. Sure, if you're doing a bunch of models, for sure. I can see that. Depends on the resin. If it's old style polyurethane resin, then Simple Green should be all right. If 3D print maybe that your stripper has alcohol, you don't want to use it. I don't think there's alcohol in Simple Green. I think the idea of it being Simple Green is it's supposed to be like non-toxic, but I could be wrong. Paddock is just another term for a fenced field. There you go. GW has a bunch of stuff delayed. Just look at the Soulblight Gravelord launch. I guess I didn't know there was one, but that sounds right. Just look through the Trench Crusade lore primer, some cool looking faction artwork in there, very cool illustration. They do some amazing work. The illustrations in Trench Crusade are amazing. I was at a convention clinic once and they defined a paddock as basically an empty area that isn't deep bushland or built up area. Huh. So a gully down the back of a farm qualifies as well as the empty yard with a radio tower standing in the middle. Let's start calling our backyard a paddock. That's not fenced though. Not an option for everyone, I know, but I spray prime during the cold and then pop the stuff in the bathroom with the vent on. Prime success, no smell fumes. We don't have vents in our bathroom. I grew up with a vent in the bathroom, and neither of our bathrooms have vents. One does have a window right by the toilet, though, so that's kind of nice. When it's like nice and warm and stuff like that, sitting there on the toilet with the window open, that's I don't know why. I enjoy that. It's very it's just there's something about it. Let's see here. Got a new mini of the month, so I'm building one of those Emperor's Children. Sculpt is pretty good, big mold lines, but the placement is easy to work on. Well, that's good. All water-based acrylic primers use lacquer primers. They actually adhere to the surface. No, I'm not. For me, there's no benefit. I've never had a problem with the Army Painter Black Matte or Matte Black airbrush primer. I've never had it come off. So the amount of fumes and all that kind of stuff that come out of like lacquer based primer, I'm just not going to do that. So recently used the new Monument Hobbies brush on primer and said it was pretty good. What makes can't you just brush on an airbrush primer? Or is there like differences to it? I guess I don't know. I have no idea. I'll have to look into it. I know there are brush on primers like Army Painter makes a gray brush on primer that comes in some of their paint kits. It comes in the starter box, the starter kit box, which is like a $40 box. I know there's a gray brush on primer in there, but I've not tried it. All primers can and will rub off if the mini has mold release agent left from manufacturing. Well, sure, yeah, if you don't wash the minis. Like with plastics, I've never really seen a problem. But with resin, like not 3D printed resin, but like poured resin, yeah, you have to wash that stuff before you prime it. Good morning from Springfield. It's been quite some time since the last live show, but made it back. Well, good to hear. Good to see you. Hi from Germany. I've had great success with Molotov One for All refiller out the airbrush and Montana Gold cans. I know Montana Gold, and I know Molotov makes that super bright chrome silver, but I guess I haven't seen the other thing you mentioned, the One for All. I don't know what that is. Let's see here. Washing off traces of mold release agent is a step many overlook. Yeah, yeah. As filters collect particulates, the globs of dried paint will grab new particulates faster and easier, so there is a balance. Huh. Highly recommend going to the thrift store and getting an old lazy Susan for mini painting. I use it, like I said, for airbrush. I do use it all the time, but I don't. I just bought. They make them for cake. You just go to like a hobby store or like a craft store that has like a section for decorating cakes, and they're almost always going to have. Or you go into online or whatever, but you find these things and they're, I don't know, 11 inches, maybe a foot, and then you set it in there, and then it's really good for spinning things around, especially like for terrain too, when you're rattle canning, not rattle canning, when you're spraying with your airbrush. My daughter's white car is parked in the garage, so priming in there is a no-go. Yeah, I can understand that. Yep, for sure. We don't keep our cars in the garage because it's not quite big enough for both of them, and we've got junk in there, so there's that too. LA is totally awesome. Is stupidly amazing for stripping minis. It has no right to be this good. It is amazing stuff. I've told this story before. We go to some friend's house. We are this couple friends of ours. We go to their house nearly every Friday, and a bunch of different people in our friend group all meet there, and then we go usually to dinner someplace, and then blah blah. Anyway, they we kind of catch up over the week as well about like how things been going this week and whatever. And she was like, yeah, it's been a weird week because we've been trying to paint the kitchen and the paint is falling off of the walls. And so we went back to the paint store and they're like, well, that doesn't make sense. And so we got a new batch. We came back and painted and waited for it to dry and it was falling off the walls and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, and I made sure to sand and prep everything beforehand. And I used a degreaser on it beforehand before doing the priming, all this kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not, I mean, I'm listening, but I'm like looking at something on my phone or whatever. And she says, and I used a degreaser. And I was like, or no, she said I used a bright yellow degreaser. And I was like, wait, what did you use? She's like, this bright yellow degreaser from the dollar store. I'm like, it's called LA's Totally Awesome. And she said, yeah. And I'm like, I don't think you rinsed it all off. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, in miniatures, we use LA's Totally Awesome to strip paint off of models because it works so well. I'm like, I don't think you must have wiped it all off. You must have not rinsed it all off. So she went back, resanded, and then rinsed everything down, and then the paint stuck ever since. But it was like literally, she was like, we came in like through the back door, went through the kitchen, and there were just big chunks of paint that had just like fallen off the wall because she hadn't completely wiped off, rinsed off the LA's Totally Awesome when she originally cleaned it, everything, and prepped it to get going. Because the kitchen, you want to use a degreaser on there because you cook stuff, and over years the walls get icky. So she was completely right to do that, but she didn't realize how powerful that stuff is for getting paint off of stuff or making paint not stick to stuff. So there's that too. LA's is the goat indeed. I used to use Super Clean, which was purple, but I've switched over to yellow stuff. I used Simple Green for years and gave LA a go. Your recommendation, never looked back. Yeah, oh yeah. Hey, Malev, how you doing? Let's see here. I use Easy Off oven cleaner when I need to strip something and an old toothbrush under running warm water in the laundry sink wearing rubber gloves. I'd be nervous about using that with poured resin, honestly. Maybe not plastic, definitely not metal. It works great for metal, I'm sure, but I'd be a little nervous about poured resin. Simple Green changed their formula some years ago, not as effective now. Switched to LA's Totally Awesome, works pretty darn well. Yeah, yeah. Plenty of ways to deal with an airbrush using acrylics. My rig is a plastic box with a bathroom exhaust fan, a bit of air to move the dust away from me. Yeah. On a lot of 3D prints, you can see the shine of the mold release agent. Had a hard time scrubbing it. I don't think that there's mold release agent on a 3D print. Is there? Because there's no mold. Like, what mold release agent is, you folks probably know this, but you have like a rubber mold, like, and you're going to pour resin in there. You need to spray stuff in there so the resin doesn't stick to the mold. It's like when you spray Pam into a pan and so your cake comes out. You know what I mean? Um, but with 3D printing, there's no mold, so there shouldn't be any mold release. That doesn't, I don't know. But with poured resin, where you pour it into a mold, yeah, you got to put something in there. So any poured resin that you ever get, whether it's terrain or models or whatever, you always want to scrub it a little bit with an old toothbrush and a little bit of maybe dishwashing liquid. Um, Otherwise, the paint might not stick to it. Used the brush on primer from Army Painter the first time last week, and it's worked pretty well. Nice. I've used Stynylrez airbrush primer before as a brush on with decent success. Takes a lot of coats and a lot of patience. I used to use Reaper made a black brush on primer that I didn't use as primer. I only used it for painting the rims on my bases. I had like 3 bottles of it, and then eventually I ran out of it, and now I don't use it anymore. Now instead I just use matte black, like regular paint, like Fanatic paint. I just do that once, and then the second layer after that dries is I do Grim Black, which is the speed paint. I just paint that over the top of the matte black stuff, and it gives it, I don't know, it just, I like the overall surface that it gives. Like sometimes black paints on rims, when I do them, if I do them too thick or something like that, when they dry, it can sometimes even get little tiny cracks in them and stuff like that. But when you throw that grim black speed paint over the top of them, they don't seem to do that. About Mini of the Month. Are you really supposed to build it in the shop? When I wanted to pick up the Krieg guy, I was told so by the manager. Never heard that before. I haven't been to an actual GW, like Warhammer shop in years. Possibly since before the pandemic. Yeah, I think it's been since before the pandemic. How are the speed paint metallics? Magical. It's magical. I don't know how they do it. The speed paint metallics, like when I first heard there were metallic speed paints, I was like, that's not a thing. There's no metallic, because I was thinking from the world of contrast paints, because speed paints and contrast paints are kind of in the same category. They are generally transparent. They're designed to get darker in the crevices, all that kind of jazz, blah, blah, blah. And then when speed paints came out in the second edition, basically, and they're like, oh, and we also have metallics now too. And I was like, how does that even work? And they're just, I use them for like nearly everything. The only time that I use a regular metallic these days is for either edge highlighting, after if I want to do some edge highlighting to pop the metallics that I've already done with the speed paint metallics, like later after it's dried, or if I need to dry brush. Don't dry brush with speed paints. It just doesn't, it does, well, I don't know, maybe there's a use for it, but for most things you don't, it does, the use doesn't work. So you just use a regular metallic for, like, say, speed painting, or sorry, for dry brushing, let's say chainmail, right? You got some sort of knight or whatever, they got chainmail, use a little bit of regular metallic for that. If you use the metallic speed paint on chainmail, it will flow into all the little holes in, and then it doesn't look like or it doesn't look like chainmail as easily. So yeah, generally you prime that part black in some fashion, so the black gets into all the little holes, and you dry brush it with regular metallics. But for everything else, swords, armors, blah blah blah, I generally use the metallic speed paints because they work amazing. They are super 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 incredibly fine because they don't have mica in them. They have aluminum powder. So most metallic paints are mica, which is a mineral, and that's what makes the reflective. Fanatic metallics, not the speed paints, but the normal Fanatic, use a mixture of mica and aluminum powder, and the specific speed paint metallics, from what I understand, just use aluminum powder. So it's very, very super finely ground. Might be unwashed or improperly cured resin. Since there's no mold, there shouldn't be a mold release agent. That was what I was thinking. Greetings from Peshtigo. Building this Quar's War Clash of Rifles starter set. Nice. Where is Peshtigo? It's in Wisconsin. I don't remember exactly where, but closer to Green Bay, I think. Been using Monument Primer for a while and keep having issues where it peels and chips off sharper details no matter how long I left it to cure. Is there a trick or am I doing something wrong? I always assumed it was because I was painting very wet. Like I said, I have a tendency to use speed paints a lot and heavy washes because that's kind of just my paint style. And so, especially with speed paints, where you're putting it directly over the primer, well, because that's the thing too, is that very frequently I would do obviously a black and white zenithal. So it would be the primer, but then I'd be putting white over the top of it. Sometimes white primer, but sometimes just also just regular old white paint. Or sometimes ink back in the day. I don't use ink anymore, but I used to. And you'd think that would hold it down as well. But yeah, every once in a while, you just be working on something, putting a lot of fluid on it, and all of a sudden, it'd just be like a part would peel off, and you'd be like, well, that isn't helpful. Not usually big parts. It's not like it pulls up, but like small little tiny bits will all of a sudden just come off. And you're like, that's weird. Walmart used to sell cheap plastic 2-tier Lazy Susans to put condiments and spices in your dinner table. Bought 2 and used parts to make a third. Then revolving paint rack and Lazy Susan for paint. It makes sense for paint, but if you're trying to do it for like airbrushing and stuff where you want to be able to spin the model and spray from a bunch of different angles, then like I said, one of those cake decorating ones works out really well. That's what I use. Random cat hair and other fibers just float and land in the freshly painted models no matter what. I mean, yeah, I've always got that going on. There are cake decorating stores that may be more reliable for a selection of cake decorating turntables. Yeah, it could be. Been using MTN 94 for priming for the last year. I have no idea what that is. MTN 94. Covers well, but I have to be careful about temperatures. 3D prints do not use release agent at all. I wouldn't think so. Famous for an awful fire that happened in the late 1800s. Ooh, yeah. There was a big fire here in town too, like again in the 1800s, because this city, like one of the names, like how a lot of cities have like nicknames. Um, this town was known as Sawdust City for a long time because there were a lot of sawmills. There was a lot of sawmills for wood production and stuff like that. And there was definitely a big Oshkosh fire sometime in the 1900s, early 1900s, or maybe it was late 1800s. I don't remember when, but there was a big fire. The shine on 3D prints is usually the maker didn't apply or properly clean all the IPA off before doing the final cure. It makes it look glossy forever. Prime over it and you're good. Yeah. Wisconsin has some great town names. I'll look into the history later. Thanks for answering. Gosh, what was I just watching recently? Or I was listening to something. I want to say it was a podcast. It might have been last podcast on the left, and they kept talking about Waukesha. I'm like, that's Waukesha. It's not Waukesha. It's Waukesha. And then I just was recently, something came up in the news or whatever, and they were talking about Fond du Lac, which is they were pronouncing it Fond du Lac, and I'm like, it's not Fond du Lac, it's Fond du Lac. But yeah, there's a lot of Manitowoc, Economawak, Waukesha, Mequon. Like there's a lot of like Native American names. Never needed to strip resin miniatures, so I never tried easy off on resin, but plastic or metal is no problem. Vinyl, I would not even try. 3D prints will sometimes not be cleaned properly with isopropyl alcohol and cured with resin residue. Yeah. You're right about mold release. I've been finding 30K models and newer 40K are not cleared off as well with mold release with the COcast or whatever. Well, so 30K and 40K models, if they're from GW, they don't use COcast. They use normal plastic production. And I don't know if normal plastic miniatures, like what do they call that type of plastic? HIPS, HIPS. I don't know what it stands for. High impact polystyrene. I just made that up, but it might be right. Anyway, that stuff I've never washed. I've never, every single plastic on a sprue GW model or whatever that I've ever painted, I've never washed. So I don't know if there's mold release on those types of molds because they're hard, you know, they're metal molds, injection molded heat, and I don't know. Um, but rubber molds, which is going to be your poured resin for the most part, and also metal. Um, Metal gets poured into, gets, you know, spun basically into rubber molds. Then you do want to have some mold release, and it's not that the model won't come out, it's just that sometimes over time it will pull pieces of the mold with it, which then makes the next time you use the mold it doesn't work as well, and you get kind of weird bumpy bits and stuff like that on the models. So that's why you do that. But I don't know if regular plastic uses mold release in the process or not. That I don't know. But like I said, I've never cleaned a GW model specifically ever. I've just always primed directly over the plastic and never had an issue. Monument Hobbies PR speech about their brush on primer explains that you can certainly brush the regular primer, but it'll probably take a couple of coats because it's thinned for airbrush use. I guess that makes sense. Oh, there's a cardinal. Just there you go. See ya. The easiest way to fix stupid squirrel. He's trying to get the bird feeder. The easiest fix is a 2-wash system. First wash in dubiously clean IPA, second much cleaner. Okay. After I warm up the can, I use a gallon jug of hot water in an insulated bag to keep the can warm. It works pretty well for the winter, but the coating gets wonky if I don't watch the painting. Squirrels being bad. Native Americans inspired the coolest city names for Wisconsin. There's a lot of them. Yep, yep. I suspect Easy Off might dissolve vinyl models like the Hero Clicks or Mech Warrior. Oh, yeah. No, I would definitely not want to use that type of thing on those. Absolutely. I like talking to people in my backyard through my window while using the toilet. See, that I don't do. It's not, there's nobody back there ever usually anyway. So there's that too. But sometimes I see a bird. Converting some War Machine models into crisis suits. I made one a hockey goalie. Interesting. You clean a resin mini, it will actually eventually weep more resin residue even after the main clean. Hot water and dish soap are on all resin minis of any type. Sometimes wash plastic as well. Yeah, it's like I said, I've never washed plastic. I've never had a problem. I'm from the Kanawha Valley. We pronounce it Kunawa. Okay, okay. Native American names plus French names plus anglicized modifications. A state full of fun pronunciations. You're not wrong. Just Googled it. HIPS is indeed high impact polystyrene. There we go. Look how smart I am. How is Belknap pronounced? I think I always assumed that it was K, it was silent. But I guess not necessarily. Watching people mispronounce names is hilarious. I grew up near Philly and I love watching people struggle with Bryn Mawr, Manayunk. That one I don't know. And the Schuylkill River. Those are, Saskatchewan is fun to say. I do agree. Technically, Fond du Lac is French and actually pronounced Fond du Lac. Although here we seem to like Fond du Lac. Yep, that's exactly how it's pronounced in Fond du Lac. Knew a guy in college whose last name was Dubois, except that he and his entire family had always pronounced it Dubois. So yeah. As far as I'm aware, regular GW models don't use a release agent. I honestly think, and I could be wrong on this, but I believe that when the metal mold comes apart like that, I think they force air through the channels that the plastic had just shot through, and then that literally blows the sprue out of the mold. But I could be wrong on that. My buddy moved to Temagami up North Ontario. I was gonna say Tamagotchi. That'd be fun. Look at me, I'm caught up. That's crazy. So anyway, that's good. But squirrel is just causing havoc. Get out of here. A common local name is Gaudette, which is pronounced Goody. Interesting. That's an odd one. But I'm trying to think. So my plan is this: I need to find some. I want to print some buildings. I have Lord knows I printed a bunch of buildings last year, and I've been working on them over the winter. And now I want to print some more because I need some more terrain for um, blackout. So last week, in between other things and this and that and all that kind of stuff, I painted up a new force for blackout. I painted up UN Recon. I think they're the UN Recon. It's so the new starter for blackout comes with two forces: Task Force Boone, and then I think UN Recon. And I have built them. I mean, they're 3D printed, so for the most part, like there's some models that you do have to build. Like there's these kind of bigger sort of robot-y guys. They're not like the big, whatever they call the big ones that come down. I can't think of what they call the big ones it's not like Titanfall, but it's kind of like Titanfall, but I forget what they call them. Not jumpers. I can't remember. Anyway, the bigger kind of mechs that come down, it's not those. They're like smaller than that. One of them kind of looks like Ed 209 from RoboCop. Anyway, those you have to put together, but the regular troopers and stuff like that, they're already 3D printed, and you just glue them to a base and you're done. They're awesome. I like them a lot. Dusters, that's what they're called. Dusters. So, and I haven't built any dusters yet. I own two of them that I bought 2 Adepticons ago, and one of them's got super thin ankles and they make me nervous. So I'm trying to figure out a way to maybe reinforce it with brass rod. I don't know. Anyway, so the original starter, I painted both of those. That's Manticore and Harlow forces. And then now the new starter that came out is Task Force Boone and UN Recon. UN Recon guys are now painted. They need to be matte varnished, but otherwise they're done. But at the same time, as I built those, and then I also built Task Force Boone, and I took them all into the airbrush room, and I did the colors, the main base colors to start for the UN Recon, and then I also did the main colors for Boone. Then I did all the details and everything for Recon, and now I need to do the details for Boone. When I'm done with that, I will then have 4 forces for Blackout, which is pretty cool. Blackout is going to be at, they're going to be a vendor at TMX this year, FYI. They're going to be running demos as well. I would show you the page for TMX, but I can't for some reason because OBS is being a jerk. But Blackout, they'll be there. One Page Rules is going to be there. Higher Purpose Prints is going to be there. They're a producer of high detail resin miniatures from the STL Flicks library. I'm not quite sure, but they're going to be selling printed stuff from, and then of course, Denali Badger Studios will be there. And hopefully we will have our new game ready to go. Hopefully. Also, hopefully, I will have some of the last few available Tabletop Minions battle foam bags. I'm going to have, I think, some of those there. I need to get them to mail them so they're here in time, which shouldn't be the worst. I mean, we're still just a touch over a month away from TMX, but still, I should have some of those to sell there, and hopefully we'll have our books if everything goes right. And then, like I said, One Page Rules will be there, Blackout will be there, and then this Higher Purpose Prints will be there selling STLs. Not selling STLs, selling prints made from STLs. It's kind of how it works. So yeah, y'all appear to be having a great time. It's going well. New game when? It's coming out the 30th of May, so this month. And if everything goes right, tomorrow I will have the printed proof in my hands. They said that they were sending it next day air, and they said that it was on Saturday when they sent it, but it looks like I'm not getting it till Monday, so evidently not Sundays. And what are you going to do? Have you ever showed how you store your finished armies and warbands? I'm imagining shelves and shelves full of painted minis. No, honestly, Battle Foam makes their biggest trays, their biggest foam trays. I forget exactly what size they are, but they're a good size foam tray. They make cardboard boxes, kind of like banker boxes. If you've ever been familiar with banker boxes, you see them in businesses and stuff like that, and you buy them and they're flat and you fold them up and they have a lid on top and then you've got handles. Um, they make a banker box style box that is exactly the size of their biggest trays. So I have 4 of those boxes, I think. And then I've just got foam trays full of different miniatures and stuff like that. I've also got cases around and this and that. But yeah, I don't have a cool display thing. I mean, I bought an IKEA display case. It's just not built. I need to build it, but I need to clean the basement before I build it. And so that's the process. On a couple days ago, Saturday? Was it yesterday? Or no, it was Friday, I think. I went to Menards and bought about 10 of these big heavy duty plastic totes. They're the kind that are like black with the yellow lid. They're a lot heavier dutier. Oh, heavier dutier? They're a lot more heavy duty than the normal like Sterilite or like, I don't know. Even sometimes like the Rubbermaid ones are just not very good. But these are pretty sturdy. So the plan, and I don't like to talk about plans sometimes because that takes away from the plan a little bit. Sometimes you go, well, I told people about it and I got that, I don't have to do it now. Anyway, I'm going to start filling each of those tubs with stuff from the basement that I want to get out of the basement, not permanently, but for a while, so I can like clear a space in the basement so that I can start moving things. Like and I've said this before, it's like those games where you have like those tile games where you can slide the tiles and it makes a picture. But if you have to have a blank spot, otherwise you can't slide the tiles. Currently, my basement is one of those tile games, but there's no blank tile. There's just so you can't. So the idea is to move a bunch of those things into the garage, fill them. They're in the garage now. Fill them full of stuff, and then that gives me, and not just random stuff from everywhere because that doesn't help. Like find a spot and go, everything in this area is going in these tubs and going in the garage. Then I'll have this area clean, and then I can take this thing from over here, put it over here, and then I can move this over here and do this. And that's the plan. And we'll see how it works. It should work. At ArmorCast, we always recommend first washing and then priming our models with a good lacquer-based primer, automotive primer if possible. I always wash the stuff that I got from ArmorCast because I've got stuff from ArmorCast that is, I bet, 30 years old. I would not be surprised. But I always wash it first, and then because it's terrain, I almost always use rattlecan spray of some kind. Yep. Not doing too bad. Got to catch up on housework. Same here. Have you ever showed how you? I just read that one. English names are bad enough. Look up Sir Reginald Pike Devant, Track Shibboleth. That's a lot of things going on there. Down south, we get some fun place names as well. Chupadalus, pronounced Chapalupus. 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 That doesn't look right. I don't. Oh, okay. Isn't a shibboleth a Lovecraft monster? Shaggoth? That's a Lovecraft monster. Shibboleth. Isn't a shibboleth a if you've read the novel Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, a shibboleth is like kind of like a meme, but it's spoken, maybe? I don't know. I could be wrong. Shelves full of dusty miniatures and cobwebs. I mean, we've got cobwebs in the basement, don't get me wrong, but I don't have shelves of dusty miniatures, thankfully. It's also fun to hear a sat-nav mangle place names, whether US or UK. Oh, yeah, that's true. You want words that have no relation to how they are pronounced? You can't go past Welsh. Also true. Welsh is crazy that way. I'm in central Indiana, also affected by priming season. I don't have an airbrush or brush on primer, and I was able to spray rattle can primer into an old jar lid and work quickly with an old brush. I've never done that. I've heard people like they call it, what do they call it, decanting like rattle can paint, but I've never done that. It seems I don't know. I don't know why I would do that. I should reread Snow Crash. Snow Crash is good. Shibboleth is a spoken word to recognize your tribe. Shub Niggurath. That one I think is also a Lovecraft, I think. And then that last one I think is pronounced Nyarlathotep. Because for the longest time I had no idea how to pronounce that last one there. That loosely collected just poked it. But then there's a band called the Darkest of Hillside Thickets, and they do songs that are all about Lovecraft stuff. That's just what they do, and they have a song called Nyarlathotep, and so that's how I know at least how they pronounce it. You know what I mean? New Monument Hobbies brush on primer is quite good. I was also able to prime something quick the night before Adepticon. Oh, neat. That's cool. We use shibboleths to show our interest in a topic that only others who would recognize it would then recognize you as part of their tribe. I mean, if you can say Fond du Lac properly, without just by reading it, not by hearing somebody else say it. If you say it's Fond du Lac, then we know you're not from Fond du Lac. I guess that could be kind of a shibboleth at that point. Let's see here. Lovecraft always bringing you the fun words, like a lot of weird made up stuff. Absolutely. My miniature shelves need a serious dusting. The basement room where I keep them needs a reorganization in a bad way. Sure. How it's said locally isn't nothing like how it's spelled. Yeah, it doesn't look like how it's spelled at all, for sure. Shadow Out of Tim is my favorite album of theirs. That's a pretty good one. Yeah, yeah. I first came across that band years and years and years and years and years ago at Gen Con, back when Gen Con was still in Milwaukee. It was the year after the year that Wizards of the Coast bought TSR and therefore bought Gen Con. The year that TSR bought Gen Con, if I remember correctly, because they had money at this point, they were like, hey, we should have some music. That'd be pretty cool. We'll have a band come and play and stuff like that out on the street. And they did. And they didn't tell anybody initially who it was. They just said there's going to be a band on like Thursday night, come to this area, blah, blah, blah. So we go to that area one night on that, night, and they got to check your ID because it's Wisconsin. And of course there's beer trucks. And so I was asking the guy who's checking IDs, I'm like, so who's the band? They never said. It was like a secret. And he was like, oh, it's the Violent Femmes. Now, we thought it was going to be some local Milwaukee band. Technically, the Violent Femmes are from Milwaukee, but they were not known as a local band at that point in the 90s. We were like, "What?" And yeah, it was the it was the Violent Femmes. And that was crazy. It was a crazy show. But then the next year, they had another band. But this time they didn't make it a secret. They told people about it up front, and it was They Might Be Giants. And that was amazing. But the band that opened for They Might Be Giants was Darkest of the Hillside Thickets. And that was the first time I'd ever seen them. And they were dressed up in costume, and they're all out there playing music and doing stuff in these crazy, like not Cthulhu costumes, but like Lovecraftian, like oriented costumes and whatnot. And they were awesome. So that was great. And then the year after that, they just had a crappy DJ. And after that, it just, but those 2 years in a row, back in the 90s, late 90s, just after Wizards of the Coast bought TSR and Gen Con, that first year, they're like, oh, there's going to be a band, but they were keeping it secret, and it was Violent Femmes, and that was amazing. And then the next year after that, it was not a secret, so we knew about it ahead of time, but it was, They Might Be Giants with Darkest the Hillside Thickets opening for them. That was awesome. I grew up going to Oshkosh for the fly-ins. Yeah. I worked at, how many fly-ins did I work at? 8 or 9. Because my first day of working at the Experimental Aircraft Association was the week before that fly-in, and then my position was eliminated. That was 2007, I think. And then in 2015, my position was eliminated, but it was after the fly-in. So I think that would be 8 years, but I think I got 9 fly-ins in there. I could be wrong. I don't think about it that much anymore. Hi, Uncle Adam. Do you think Army Painter historical paints and John Blanche paints will be sold separately? Not sure how long I have to wait. So we were told that the John Blanche paints will be available separately sometime in the spring or summer, or maybe it was spring or early summer. I forget exactly. I do not know about the historical paints. Now, we're having a big online meeting earlier this week coming up for the factory team and all that kind of stuff. So that'll be something I'll try to remember to ask. But we're talking about like plans and like what's going on next and all that kind of stuff like that. So we're having a meeting. We do them sort of frequently anyway. But yeah, we haven't done one since Adepticon, so this will be the first meeting since Adepticon. But I'll try to ask. But I do know that they have said in the past that the John Blanche ones will be sold separately, but it won't be until like again spring or summer. So. Let's see. I used to know several from when I worked TV tech support in the U.S. because I have a Canadian accent, but nobody questioned me if I said the college football thing. Oh, okay. I hit 25 models this week towards my yearly goal of 100. Got to try to keep up the momentum. Absolutely. Been painting the rims on some dwarves all morning, and man, painting the rims shouldn't be as satisfying. It is really satisfying, though, isn't it? Yeah. Final touch and signaling. Okay, these are done. For me, I'm still going to put a varnish over them. So that's like the final touch. But man, that painting the rims is nice. Working on Fulgrim's torso at the moment. Why did I do this to myself? I mean, yeah. Both Shoggoth and Yog Sothoth are Lovecraftian monsters. It's true. It's true. Watched a really good Violent Femmes documentary the other day. The band has an interesting history. Oh, yeah, they do, for sure. I lived in Brooklyn for a while. The MIP Giants would do shows from time to time. Funny having them as a local band. Yeah, I've only seen them, how many times? I've only seen them maybe 3-4 times, I think, yeah. Did you ever look into flying yourself, recreational license or anything? No. When I worked there, I did start to get into model or remote control airplanes a little bit, because that was the thing, is that basically working there, it was kind of like there were 2 types of people that worked for the organization. There were people who were airplane people, pilots and whatnot, and all that kind of stuff, builders, who then got put into positions there, and then kind of learned that position. And then there were people who knew the position, like IT and stuff like that, which is what I did at the time. I was working in web design and everything for the web department. But then some of those people would then start to move into like getting into airplane stuff. And it wasn't like you were expected to get into airplane stuff, but you a little bit were, kind of. So I was not interested in learning how to fly. I just never did it for me. But remote control airplanes were always cool, I thought. So there were also a decent amount of people who were into that as well. So I started kind of paying attention more to that, and I bought a couple of like, consumer grade type of things and whatever. I wasn't building anything yet. If I would have stuck with the company longer, I was only there, like I said, I think 8 years. I might have done more with that, but no, I mean, I flew on things. There were some helicopter rides in one of those Bell helicopters, like from the beginning of MASH. Did a couple of those, like during the air show, to like fly over and kind of see stuff. It was pretty cool. I got to fly in a B-17. I got to fly in a PT-29, I believe is what it was called, which was a trainer from the 20s. I actually got to fly that, like it was a 2-seater. It's a trainer. That's the whole idea. So I got to, do stuff for a bit and be like, okay, that's good enough. What else? Not much else. But B-17 was pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. Overhearing tourists on their first time to Los Angeles as they read the straight name Sepulveda. Ooh, there you go. I think it's actually pronounced Sebulba. No, that's not true. I hope those Blanche paints get sold separately. I've been blasting through Emperor's Gold and Heavy Metal. Yeah, like I said, they should be. They should be. Velvet Underground is my go-to dinner music as of late. Sure. Peachy said the historical paints will also be sold separately eventually. I assume so. I haven't heard that myself, but I'm hoping he's right. Let's see here. Do you think tariffs will hurt the mini and related industries? Yeah, I think it'll hurt all industries, pretty much. My main hobby model trains. All the major manufacturers put a YouTube video out stated unless they can find a way around them, they will have to shut down. Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like there's already been. Let's see. There was a company called something. There's a board game company called something Frontier. I can't remember what it's called. It was something. It was like something that starts with an F and then Frontier. Frank's Frontier? Probably not. But it was something Frontier. And I know they've already been like, we're out. And then there's another company called Greater Than Games, which I've heard of, like, and I've met people from that company, and they're basically like, we're laying everybody off and stopping, but we're not necessarily going out of business because we're going to see what happens, I guess. I don't know. And then now Cool Mini or Not has basically said, we're laying a ton of people off and we're not doing any new things, which is kind of like closing a little bit, but you still have a bunch of stuff that you can still ship out, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, so it's not good. It's very bad. Do you always put varnish over models? Yes. Have you had a chance to look at Guards of Trader's Troll? I've been interested in picking it up. Is that a miniatures game? I've not heard of that one. I always varnish because I'm using them for tabletop, so I'm going to be touching them a lot. I know that a lot of people who do display painting stuff don't varnish much at all, but I always do. I always like to use a nice matte varnish. IT nerd / civil air search and rescue hobby side. I blame miniatures for getting me out of civil air search or civil air and rescue. I get into Blood Red Skies if they ever release another Battle of Britain. Oh yeah, yeah. Vallejo used to sell a fluorescent set, hadn't been able to find it. Lucas from Squidmar Mini said something in a video about a possible new fluorescent set. So I was hoping that they announce a new set. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that. Army Painter has a fluorescent set for airbrush, which are more opaque. And then in the Fanatic paint line, they have some fluorescents in the effects paints, but they're not opaque. They're almost like fluorescent washes. So they're good for when you're doing like OSL to be like, oh, I'm going to make this area like glowy, but it's not opaque fluorescent. Whereas the airbrush paints are far more opaque fluorescent. Our black site and company that makes Blackout, company that makes Blackout is called Enemy Spotted Studios. Are they both totally domestic? They could get a real bump. I mean, I'm 90% sure their printing's all done in the USA. I don't know about Black Site, to be frank. But I know with like Blackout, aka Enemy Spotted Studios, I know that they always really push the Made in USA thing. And I'm assuming their printing's done in the USA. And I'm pretty sure that it is. The miniatures, for the most part, are 3D printed in one of the Carolinas. Wherever Death Ray Designs is, because Death Ray Designs does the majority of their, I think it does all of their 3D printing stuff, but you can buy from Blackout. You can either buy the 3D printed resin or you can buy poured resin, which is basically, I think they use spin casting most likely. But either way, they don't do plastic, and they don't do metal. They do either resin that's been poured into a mold or 3D printed resin. And I've always bought the 3D printed resin because though it is more delicate and you could technically snap things off a little bit, they build their models to be relatively, I would say, robust, not tiny little, antennas sticking off everywhere and all that kind of stuff. There is like definitely, I know I was painting on one of the UN recon forces. There's a guy that's got a backpack coming out of his he's got an antenna coming out of his backpack, but it's real thick. It's like short and stubby, thick kind of like antenna, as opposed to like a whip antenna or something like that, for sure. Speaking of tariffs and minis, Warsenal very kindly paid my tariff fees for a pre-order I placed before they were announced. Would have cost me $100 to $200. Ugh. Good day, everyone. Taking a college baseball game with my son. Hope you're well. I hope you're doing well too, Kelly. Guards of Trader's Toll is cool. Never heard of it. Uncle Adam and then a no good, very bad tariffs. Yes. Semi-cooperative miniatures game where you play a bunch of guards trying to solve crimes and keep the peace. Huh. Enemy Spotted Studios makes Blackout. They are 100% domestic. That's what I thought. I would have thought companies would have learned to not be so dependent on overseas industry after the problems with COVID. I mean, there's not a lot of choice. There's one company that I can think of here in America that does plastic injection molding, and that is Wargames Vault. No, sorry, Wargames Atlantic. Wargames Atlantic is out of, it's not Atlanta, it's like outside of Atlanta in Georgia, the state, not the country. So yeah, and there is this weird mindset in the game industry, specifically in, RPGs. Every RPG manufacturer or publisher or whatever that I've ever talked to is always like, oh yeah, you got to get your books printed in China. It's the best way to get the prices. And I've just always been like, I don't know. And then partially it's because I live in Wisconsin and there's a lot of printing in Wisconsin because there's a lot of paper in Wisconsin. And there always has been. So I know people, tons of people who work in different printing companies and that kind of stuff. And I've always been like, because I'll show them a book, you know, I'll be like, could your company do this? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, well, but would it be as cheap? And they're like, potentially no, but it also doesn't have to be shipped from the other side of the planet. Like, I know that back in the day, Privateer Press would have like, hey, we're making a new book. It's coming out soon. And then they would miss the date because the book would never make it over from China. Like it would get lost. Like it happened frequently. And it happened with a bunch of different people. The reason that Mercs, that game, that was that skirmish game made by Megacon Games, I think is the name of the company, but it was Mercs was their big game. Their second edition was like a year late because they were getting it printed in China, and it just like got lost along the way, and they had to get it printed again or something like that. Like from what I understand, big shipping containers, if something starts to leak, they know they're going to have to it's going to be a real problem when they get to customs. So if they see a container starting to leak, they'll just push a whole bunch of them into the ocean while they're still in international waters. And your stuff might be on there, right? Whereas if you get stuff printed in the middle of Wisconsin, you can get in a truck and drive here and pick it up if you have to. You know what I mean? So yeah, I know that GW makes all their own plastics right there in Nottingham for the most part, other than some of the terrain stuff. But even them, unless they've changed recently, for the longest time, all their books and boxes have always come from China. And there's a lot of companies that are now finding that that's going to be a real problem. And you're right. COVID should have taught many people, maybe we should try to pull things back a little bit so that we're not as dependent upon the overall supply chain and the problems that might cause. And now with the tariffs, but we can't just go, oh, we'll just switch to having U.S. people do it, because there are no U.S. people to do it. Like I said, there's one plastic, miniature manufacturer in the entire country. And if everybody decided, well, let's use those guys, that's going to be tough, right? So yeah, it's just kind of the way it works. And also, like, our books are printed here in the States. Our books, me and Vince, and our books are not even, they're print on demand, right? So they're print on demand books. But the paper's coming from Canada. So the company that makes these books had to raise their prices because they're getting their paper from Canada. So it's always something. The guy, Dan Block, who is the guy who's doing Zeogenesis, which has hit its goal and is blowing past its goal. He's making all of the plastics himself here in the country. He figured out how to make molds. He's been figuring out how to do the plastic injection. But he said in an article on Wargamer website, wargamer.com, that if he wants to expand, he can't, because even though the machinery he buys to do the injection molding is American made, the parts for it all come from China and Japan. So he's like, they're going to be raising their prices, and I can't afford to get another box now. I mean, it's just nuts. So yeah. Gaddis Gaming is all USA made. Absolutely. How you doing, Gaddis? Keep in mind, US made doesn't mean immune to tariffs, raw materials. Yep, that's just like the paper, from Canada thing. Recently upgraded to AP Fanatics, but didn't toss my old war paints. Picked up some Speed Paint 2.0 medium, and it's been great to get more value out of both paint ranges and get a lot more painting done. Nice. Raw materials would need to be sourced in the U.S. as well for it to not have tariffs. Yep, exactly. DreamPod 9 does their plastic casting in the U.S., but they're a Canadian company, so that's weird. Oh, yeah. I work at a company that rhymes with Fidge mode. I don't know what that means. And the tariff situation is pretty heavy for the industry. Problem with printing is also a number of copies you want to print. Sure. We're lucky with Wargames Atlantic. Their minis are pretty awesome. They are pretty awesome. I'm not going to lie. Anyone supporting these tariffs is an enemy of the people. So I've always heard nobody wins in tariff wars. That's also very, very true. Folks, it's a little bit after 11 in my neck of the woods, so it's time for me to head out. I had a smaller breakfast than normal, and I'm kind of starving. So luckily, we're going over to my in-laws like we do, and we'll get fed over there, which is lovely. They're nice people. So thanks to everybody for coming by and hanging out today. And I hope that in your neck of the woods, it gets warm enough that you can also soon, so that you can start doing some priming. Maybe it's already warm enough. I'm going to be, like I said, probably doing some this week because it's going to be highs in the mid 60s, and that's about perfect. So yeah, so thanks to everybody for coming by and hanging out. I should hopefully be able to see you tomorrow for the Twitch stream, which I do at 7 p.m. Central Time. We're on Twitch, twitch.tv/tabletopminions. And yeah, I'll continue painting on those slightly modified goremongers I've been working on, and we'll see some of you folks then. So until then, do some hobbying if you get the chance, and stay safe, and thanks for watching.